Hi there, it says I'm live. Let me scoot this around just a little bit. All righty. Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for December 4th. December 4th is the 333rd day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 339th in leap years, with 27 days remaining to the end of the year. Today's word is culpable. Culpable is an adjective that means deserving blame. It comes to us from Middle English, from Old French before that, and ultimately from Latin, culpable. I'd like to take a moment to mention that links to my research are included in the show notes. Ask you to go ahead and click that like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and feel free to share this video with others. You can do that with the link in your email, messaging, or social media. Also, remember that there is a link in the show notes to my This Day in History playlist, and I'll put one up in the iCards just as soon as the live is done. December 4th was an interesting day in history to research. Lots of stories with lots of backstory. We're only going to hit a few of them, though, and we're going to start in the year 771 on December 4th, when Charlamagne became king of the Frankish kingdom. The Frankish kingdom was actually a pretty sizable portion of Europe, most of Western Europe, and the predecessor of modern states of France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, and Germany. The Frankish kingdom even went about halfway down the Italian peninsula. So Charlemagne became the boss of all that in the year 777. Is that right? No, 771. On December 4th, 1619, 38 colonists arrived at Berkeley Hundred, Virginia. That's what it said, Berkeley Hundred. There's a note there that said that the group's charter proclaimed that the day should be yearly and perpetually kept holy as a day of thanksgiving to the Almighty God. Now, I guess they were glad to be alive and happy about it. That's what it sounds like. But this is December, and the Thanksgiving that we celebrate is in November. So I don't know if they still do that, but maybe it's been moved, conglomerated into the rest of Thanksgiving there. December 4th, 1786, Mission Santa Barbara was dedicated on the feast day of Santa Barbara, or actually, it says Saint Barbara, but we call her Santa Barbara around here. There's a street nearby named Santa Barbara. She's often portrayed with miniature chains and a tower, and is the patron saint of people who make armor, also known as armorers. Also architects, artillerymen, firemen, mathematicians, miners, tunnelers, lightning, chemical engineers, prisoners, and a few other things. Saint Barbara or Santa Barbara. The world's first Sunday newspaper, The Observer, was published for the first time on December 4th, 1791. I'm going to guess they probably did not have any color comics in that one, though. Couple hundred years ago, there was an area known as Bengal, which ran along the Asian continent just above the Indian subcontinent. I guess that's where Bengal tigers come from. In Bengal in those days, the deceased were cremated on a structure called a funeral pyre. Funeral pyres were made of wood upon which the body was placed and then set afire. And there was a tradition in those days, mostly among the Hindus, in which a widow would sacrifice herself by getting on top of the funeral pyre and burning along with him. Yikes. This practice of sacrificing oneself on the husband's funeral pyre was called suttee or suttee. And these folks were obviously passionate about this practice, so they did object fiercely when on December 4th, 1829, the British governor of Bengal General Lord William Bentinck issued a regulation declaring that anyone who were to abet suttee in Bengal would be guilty of culpable homicide. In other words, if someone helps the widow commit suicide by throwing herself on her husband's funeral pyre, the person or persons who helped her do that could be charged with culpable homicide. Not quite murder, because they didn't murder the person outright, but they allowed and assisted the person in performing an act that would cause their death. Culpable homicide. Now, I believe we touched on this yesterday or maybe the day before, but on December 4th, 1865, North Carolina ratified the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, followed soon by Georgia. Slaves were legally free within 2 weeks. Here's a mystery for you now. On December 4th, 1872, the American ship Mary Celeste was discovered drifting in the Atlantic, abandoned. None of the people who were known to have been on board have ever been found or accounted for. New York City politician Boss Tweed escaped from prison on December 4th, 1875. He was later captured in Spain. The first edition of the Los Angeles Times was published on December 4th, 1881. President Woodrow Wilson left for Europe on December 4th, 1918, to attend peace talks in Versailles, France, becoming the first U.S. president to travel to Europe while in office. Yikes! Imagine having a Wikipedia page on the internet and your most recent claim to fame is that no matter what else you might have done with your life, the main thing anyone remembers you for is a major financial scandal. Well, this is the birthday of Charles Humphrey Keating, Jr., born December 4th, 1923. He was a championship swimmer and anti-pornography activist, but the thing people remember him for is the huge savings and loans crisis in the 1980s and 90s. This crisis cost the federal government over $3 billion. Tens of thousands of customers were left with worthless bonds. He was convicted of fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. He got those convictions overturned in favor of a more limited set of conditions of wire fraud and bankruptcy fraud. Ultimately, he only served 4 years in prison. Charles Keating died in 2014 at the age of 90. Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash got together at Sun Studio for the first and last time on December 4th, 1956. They called those four the Million Dollar Quartet. On December 4th, 2005, tens of thousands of people in Hong Kong protested for democracy and called on the government to allow universal and equal suffrage. Suffrage, of course, refers to the right to vote, usually meaning all adult citizens with few and specific exceptions. And that's all I have for you today. I hope you learned something you didn't know before. I know I sure did. Always do. As always, links to my research are included in the show notes. Links to where I actually found this material and other links that I may or may not have used today, but are interesting. So check those out. If you enjoy this series, of course, you can check out the playlist that has all the other ones that I've done. And I'll put that up in the corner, as I mentioned before. So I guess that's it. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.